Seraphina, our neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, set you up with a nice young man. He seems to have his life together. Do you want to come home and meet him?" Her mother, Alina, said over the phone. "You've spent 3 years taking care of Warren Preston. If he was going to marry you, he would have done it by now. His legs are healed, and he still hasn't said a word. You have to start thinking about yourself." Seraphina Hartwell closed her eyes, her voice tinged with bitterness. "All right. I'll come back as soon as I've settled things here." After hanging up, she walked alone down the bustling street. The LED lights on a distant skyscraper flickered, eventually changing to form her name. Seraphina Hartwell. I love you. Passers-by who saw the display raised their phones to take pictures, their voices filled with envy. "Who's Seraphina Hartwell? She's so lucky. She's Warren Preston's girlfriend." According to their old classmates, he fell for her at first sight in college. The day he confessed his feelings, he paid the entire student body to carry a single rose and give her their blessings when they saw her. Every year on her birthday, he comes up with a new, extravagant celebration. Last year it was a drone light show, and the year before, he made headlines at a Christie's auction, bidding an astronomical sum just to get a jewelry set she admired. If it weren't for the car accident that paralyzed him 3 years ago, they'd probably be married by now. Thank goodness his surgery was a success. We might get to witness the wedding of the century. At the center of the conversation, Seraphina's gaze was clouded and unreadable. She glanced at a scar on her hand and froze. Warren's affection for her had been real, and the love she'd given in return was just as genuine. When he was paralyzed and bedridden after the car crash, she had defied her family's objections to care for him for 3 whole years. She learned massage techniques from doctors and bought obscure medical textbooks, determined to try anything, no matter how slim the hope of him walking again was. No matter how emotionally volatile Warren became after the accident, sometimes even hurting her unintentionally, she never once thought of leaving. Everyone envied their story of mutual devotion. They all said the first thing Warren would do after he recovered was marry her. But what no one knew was that the man they saw as deeply devoted, Warren Preston, had another woman hidden in his heart. His childhood sweetheart, Victoria Vance. Even the car crash that had paralyzed him was a result of him speeding, trying to catch one last glimpse of Victoria at the airport before she left the country. And for every day Seraphina had spent by his side during his rehabilitation, he had written an email across the ocean, every word a testament to his longing for another. A self-deprecating glint flashed in Seraphina's eyes, yet she couldn't help but recall the details she had once believed were proof of his profound love. The restorative soups he'd brew for her by hand when she was on her period, the one-of-a-kind custom fireworks display. The way he would get jealous if she so much as glanced at another man, begging her to keep her eyes only on him. Every move he made had seemed to radiate love, but only after giving him her whole heart did she learn it was all a lie. Seraphina forced a smile, walking distractedly into an upscale restaurant. A waiter greeted her warmly, but Warren was a step ahead, pulling out her chair like a gentleman and pouring her a glass of water. During the meal, he thoughtfully cut her steak. Noticing how pale her lips were, he draped his designer jacket over her shoulders. But no matter how exquisite the food, to Seraphina, it tasted like ash. Suddenly, the restaurant plunged into darkness. A single, faint candlelight slowly moved toward her. A waiter approached with a small cart bearing a beautifully crafted cake and a bouquet of blood-red roses. Another one of Warren's little surprises. Warren took the roses, placing the bouquet in her arms with a smile in his eyes. He set the cake before her and said softly, "Make a wish." Facing the flickering candles, Seraphina closed her eyes and made her 25th birthday wish. She wished that she and Warren would never see each other again. This year's wish wasn't as long-winded as in previous years. When she opened her eyes, Warren hadn't had time to put his phone away. He was texting someone, the smile at the corners of his eyes and brows impossible to hide. "What did you wish for?" Seeing her eyes open, he casually placed his phone face down on the table, his gaze fixed on her. His pupils reflected a tiny version of her, as if she were the only one he had ever seen. Seraphina avoided his gaze and began to speak slowly. "I want—" Before the word breakup could leave her lips, a shrill ringtone interrupted her. Warren shot her an apologetic look, spoke a few words into the phone, and then said with a guilty expression, Seraphina, you head home first. There's an urgent meeting at the office." With that, he gave her hand a reassuring pat, got into his car, and sped away, leaving her alone in the romantically decorated private room. Was it really a meeting at the office, or a date with someone else? Seraphina watched his retreating back, a cynical glint in her eyes. A waiter holding a cake knife asked tentatively, "Miss Hartwell, would you like the cake now, or should I have it packed for you?" Seraphina lowered her gaze and stood up. "Don't bother boxing it up, just throw it away." The 4 years of misplaced love, she was taking it all back. On the way back to the villa, Seraphina's phone buzzed incessantly with provocative texts from Victoria Vance. A picture showed Warren, shirtless, his eyes filled with post-coital satisfaction. "How do you like my birthday present?" Surprised, Seraphina locked her phone with a blank expression. Ever since Victoria had returned to the country, Warren had started coming home late more and more frequently. He always used work as an excuse, and she, like a fool, had believed him. She would even stay up to make him a late-night snack, refusing to sleep until he was home. It was after one of those nights that she received the first text of this kind. A suggestive photo from a bedroom, accompanied by the caption, "His technique is so much better than the first time, it was like opening Pandora's box." A stream of messages, sent every few days, unraveled the truth behind what she thought was a sweet love story. "You really think Warren fell for you at first sight? He was just angry with me because he saw someone else confessing their feelings to me. Don't think you can marry him just because you took care of him for 3 years. In his eyes, you're just a carer." She had thought her heart was numb, but the pain still wrapped around it like thorns, making it hard to breathe. Seraphina blinked back the stinging in her eyes, composed herself, and managed to fall asleep. But her dreams were haunted by details of her love with Warren, causing her to sob in her sleep, finding no peace. "Seraphina, what's wrong?" A familiar voice woke her, gently wiping the tears from the corners of her eyes. Seraphina opened her eyes and, seeing it was Warren, subtly moved away from his touch. "It's nothing. Just a nightmare." A flash of pain crossed Warren's eyes. He pulled her into his arms, murmuring reassurances. "It's just a nightmare. None of it is real." But the cloying scent of perfume on him was very real. Seraphina's lips curled into a scornful smile as she gently pushed herself out of his embrace. Warren looked at her calm face, and for some reason, his heart skipped a beat. "Come back to the family estate with me today. Grandfather has been asking about you." Seraphina was silent for a moment. In the 3 years she had cared for Warren, Arthur Preston had always been kind and considerate to her. He not only gave her large sums of money on holidays, but had also given her the jade bracelet, a family heirloom meant for his grandson's wife. Seeing her nod, Warren planted a lingering kiss on her neck. His eyes filled with joy as he watched her change and pick out jewelry. When they arrived at the estate, Warren was impeccably attentive, opening her car door and gently guiding her into the main hall with an arm around her. "Mrs. Gable, is the calming soup ready?" Because Seraphina hadn't slept well, Warren had called ahead to the estate and asked Mrs. Gable, the housekeeper, to prepare the soup. The warm soup was brought out, and he lifted a spoonful to her lips. With so many people watching, Seraphina paused for a moment before obediently drinking it. Arthur Preston, seated at the head of the table, shot a glare at his grandson for the shameless display of affection before calling Seraphina over with a benevolent smile. "Seraphina, if this punk gives you any trouble, you just tell me. I'll teach him a lesson." He then turned to Warren with a stern warning. "When you were paralyzed, even your own mother nearly gave up on you. Don't you forget who stood by you and helped you with your rehabilitation. Seraphina is half the reason you can stand here today." Warren's eyelashes trembled as he looked at the quiet, beautiful, and graceful Seraphina standing beside his grandfather. Her devotion had always been something money couldn't measure. Without her, Warren didn't dare imagine if he could have survived that dark period. He smiled and promised, "Don't worry, grandfather, I'll always be good to her." Arthur Preston nodded in satisfaction. As the food was served, he sighed wistfully. "I wonder if these old bones of mine will ever get to see a great-grandchild." The other relatives chuckled and offered pleasantries, filling the room with a cheerful atmosphere. Suddenly, a cloyingly sweet voice came from the doorway. "Grandpa Preston, I'm here to see you." Seraphina tilted her head slightly and saw Warren, beside her, stiffen as if frozen in place. So, Victoria Vance had arrived. Arthur Preston's eyes lit up. He not only had a seat added for her, but also affectionately patted her shoulder and chatted with her like family. I practically watched you grow up, you know? It's been a few years, but you've only gotten more beautiful. How long are you planning to stay this time? You must keep me company. Victoria hugged Arthur's arm, cooing, I'm not leaving this time. I'll come and see you every day from now on. You better not get tired of me. Arthur let out a hearty laugh. You've always loved to run around. I bet you're staying for some young man. If you've got your eye on someone, just tell your grandpa. I'll back you up, Victoria smiled shyly, her gaze lingering on Warren as her red lips parted slightly. All right, let's eat, Warren said, his brow furrowed as he cut her off. He avoided Victoria's blatant stare and turned to put food on Seraphina's plate. The atmosphere at the table was exceedingly harmonious. Arthur even reminisced about funny childhood stories of Warren and Victoria, sending the table into peals of laughter. Seraphina mechanically chewed her food. Even though Warren didn't spare a single glance for Victoria across the table, she could still feel the undercurrents flowing between them. Her chopsticks slipped and fell. As she bent down to pick them up, she saw a shocking scene under the table. Victoria was hooking Warren's leg with her stiletto heel. Only when Seraphina bent down did Warren hastily pull his leg back. Is the food not to your liking? He asked, concerned when he saw she had stopped eating. It's fine. I just feel a little nauseous. Seraphina averted her gaze, unwilling to look at Warren's affectionate face any longer. She couldn't understand how he could flirt with another woman under the table while being so caring toward her. Grandpa Preston, I'm feeling a little dizzy. I think I'll go rest for a bit, Victoria announced abruptly, rising and casting a disdainful glance at Seraphina. Of course, I've had your old room kept clean. Go get some rest. Not long after Victoria left the table, Warren glanced at his phone and stood up as well. He brought Seraphina a plate of fruit. Something urgent came up at the office. I'm going to the study to handle it. You stay here and keep Grandpa company. We'll go home together later. Arthur watched the interaction between his grandson and Seraphina, nodding in satisfaction. Of all the people in the Preston family, Seraphina respected the kind yet authoritative Arthur Preston the most. She suppressed the urge to leave and patiently chatted with the old man. When he grew tired, Mrs. Gable helped him back to his room. The others in the hall dispersed, leaving Seraphina alone in the vast, empty space. She sat in her chair, closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and then walked toward the third-floor bedroom. Warren wouldn't be in the study on the second floor. Sure enough, a few feet from Victoria's private room on the third floor, she could hear the blush-inducing moans and gasps from within. The housekeepers generally avoided the third floor when someone was resting. Seraphina couldn't believe their audacity. Downstairs, a happy family dinner was taking place, while upstairs they were carrying on a blatant affair. Inside the room, Victoria's face was flushed. She panted softly, nestled in Warren's arms. Warren, am I not good enough? Why won't you give me a proper title? Warren's expression was dark and unreadable. Seraphina took care of me for 3 years. I can't betray her. You chose to leave back then. You didn't even come back when you knew about my accident. Why have you returned now? Victoria planted a tender kiss on his Adam's apple. The moment I found out you were with her, I regretted it. I shouldn't have been so stubborn with you. Is it too late now? Warren, who was always so gentle and polite in public, let out a low curse. Soon, the sounds of a woman's helpless sobs filled the room again. Outside the door, Seraphina's face was deathly pale. She fiercely wiped away a tear and turned to leave. It was late, and no one at the estate noticed Seraphina had left. She walked alone under the dim streetlights, trying to hail a cab, but the estate's remote location meant no drivers were willing to accept the ride. With a bitter smile, Seraphina began to walk slowly along the road. Suddenly, a motorcycle roared past and struck her. A sharp, searing pain shot through her ankle. The palms of her hands and her knees were scraped raw by sharp gravel, a bloody mess. The rider didn't even look back. Seraphina sat on the ground for a long time before slowly getting up. She had only limped a few steps when the screech of tires sounded behind her. A man rushed out and swept her into his arms, the panic on his face seeming genuine. Seraphina, I've been looking all over for you. How did you end up here? And you're hurt this badly? As he spoke the last sentence, Warren's face turned cold, suppressing a torrent of rage. He wordlessly placed her in the car and told the driver, "To the hospital." The day had been too stressful. Seraphina fell into a deep sleep in the car. When she woke up, she found herself back in the familiar villa, her wounds properly treated. She touched the clean white bandage on her ankle, a sarcastic smile playing on her lips. She didn't understand what Warren was thinking. If he only felt gratitude toward her, why pretend to care? Mrs. Miller, the housekeeper, came in with a bowl of porridge. Watching Seraphina eat with delicate sips, her voice was full of admiration. "Mr. Preston is so good to you. As soon as he found out who hit you, he had his lawyers sue them. He even put the word out that anyone who messes with you is making an enemy of the entire Preston Corporation." Seraphina froze for a second, then lowered her eyes as if she hadn't heard. After all, she was still his girlfriend in name. Warren was probably just trying to avoid gossip. Before long, Warren returned, holding a cake box that required a 3-hour wait in line. "Seraphina," he said, his gaze gentle, "I couldn't eat cake with you last time. Let me make it up to you and celebrate your birthday again." He then produced a beautifully wrapped gift box containing a dazzling diamond necklace. After fastening it around her neck, he asked casually, "Didn't grandfather give you a spot in the art and calligraphy competition yesterday?" It was a highly prestigious competition. Arthur Preston, knowing Seraphina had studied painting for over a decade, had saved the recommendation spot for her. Seraphina nodded, not understanding, only to hear Warren say, "Give the spot to Victoria. She's better suited for this competition than you are." A chill rose from the bottom of her heart. Seraphina looked up in disbelief. "On what grounds?" Warren kissed away the tear at the corner of her eye, his voice filled with an unshakable certainty. "You've been at home for over 3 years. No matter how skilled you were, your talent has surely faded. But Victoria hasn't put down her paintbrush for a single day while she was abroad." Seraphina clenched her fists so tightly her nails dug into her palms. She bit her lip until the taste of blood filled her mouth. Because she had to care for him while he was paralyzed, she had no energy to create detailed paintings. And now, that was being used as the reason to give her spot to someone else. So, the diamond necklace around her neck was nothing more than a form of compensation. She wiped away her tears and suddenly laughed out loud. "Fine, give it to her." Warren breathed a sigh of relief, but when he saw the look of finality in her eyes, his heart jumped. He quickly tried to soothe her in a low voice. "You have me. You don't need to participate in some competition. I've always seen Victoria as a sister. She's not you. I couldn't bear to see you lose sleep for days on end over a painting." Seraphina let out a soft laugh and pushed the cake aside. "I got tired of this bakery's desserts a long time ago. You don't need to buy them for me anymore." Warren was stunned. He wanted to say something, but a phone call came in, and he had to leave in a hurry. Seraphina sat quietly for a moment before rising and opening the door to her art studio. She had once painted many portraits of Warren. Warren reading, Warren eating, Warren sleeping. Her loving brushstrokes had captured him as handsome and full of life. But now, Seraphina threw the canvases into the fire, turning them, along with her love, into ash. "Miss Hartwell, are you sure you want to sell these properties? The market is doing well right now. They still have potential to appreciate." Seeing her nod, the realtor said cheerfully, "Then just wait a few more days. You should hear something soon." After seeing the realtor out, Seraphina continued to deal with messages on her phone. Having made up her mind to leave, she was preparing to liquidate all the properties and shops Warren had given her. Not to mention the jewelry and the countless gifts she received on holidays, she packed them all up and sent them to consignment shops to be sold. After replying to a message from an employee at a luxury consignment shop, she calmly put down her phone. She looked up and saw a television in the coffee shop, broadcasting an interview with the participants of the art competition. The camera was focused on Victoria, and netizens were already calling her the most beautiful artist. Victoria handled the questions with ease, only glancing shyly to her left when asked about her love life. "I already have someone in my heart. It's just that I was young and didn't know how to express my love, so I accidentally hurt him. I'm still trying my best to make it up to him now. I hope that after all is said and done, the person standing by my side will still be my childhood love." She gave a playful wink after she finished speaking. A deep male voice was heard off camera. "Vicky, let's go. Didn't you want to go to that noodle shop we used to frequent as kids? The owner closed up and went home a few years ago. It took me forever to find him, but I specially invited him back to make a bowl of noodles just for you." The camera only captured their backs. The man was broad-shouldered and long-legged. The woman on his arm looked even more petite and lovely beside him. The customers in the coffee shop gasped. "Oh my God, that's so sweet, I'm totally shipping them." What a fairy tale romance. If the man hadn't been her not yet officially ex-boyfriend, even Seraphina might have praised them as a perfect couple. She drank the last sip of her coffee, the bitterness spreading from her mouth to her heart. As she was leaving, she received a text from Warren. "Babe, meet me at the suburban park at 6. I have something to tell you." Seraphina coolly dropped the phone into her bag. Coincidentally, she had something to say to him too. She took a cab to the park. As soon as she got out, she sensed something was different. The trees were adorned with sparkling string lights, and balloons were everywhere. Except for a red carpet on the ground, the rest of the area was a sea of flowers, vast swaths of pink roses that looked like a cloud of candy-colored mist. In the middle of this ocean of flowers, Warren slowly walked toward her, a rare hint of nervousness on his face. "Seraphina, will you marry me?" He knelt on one knee, devoutly kissing her fingertips. The friends he had invited began to cheer. "Marry him, marry him." The crowd was boisterous, every face filled with the joy of the proposal, infected by the happiness of the moment, everyone except for the woman being proposed to. Warren looked at Seraphina's calm, almost cold face, his heart pounding with panic. Fortunately, she offered a slight smile. "All right, I accept." Warren's heart, which had been caught in his throat with anxiety, was instantly flooded with ecstasy. He slipped the diamond ring onto her finger, then swept her into his arms, spinning her around several times. Warren Preston is finally marrying Seraphina Hartwell. Amid the cheers, Seraphina looked expressionlessly past the crowd to Victoria, whose face was contorted with malice. A smirk touched her lips. Perhaps Warren's wavering heart had finally tilted in her favor. Or perhaps he was only marrying her out of gratitude for those 3 years. But what did it matter? She was very much looking forward to the wedding day. Warren cleared his schedule for the next few days, dedicating all his time to finalizing the wedding details with Seraphina. He hired a world-renowned wedding dress designer, meticulously selected the venue, party favors. But whenever he asked for Seraphina's opinion, her expression was always indifferent. "Whatever, I'm fine with anything." Warren frowned slightly, then forced a smile. "Babe, what about those paintings you did of me? I wanted to make them into a photo album to display at the wedding." Seraphina glanced at him and replied softly, "I burned them." Seeing Warren's stiff expression, she added with a touch of sarcasm, "Didn't you say my skills had gotten rusty? Those paintings were an eyesore, so I just burned them." Her words sent a wave of unease through Warren, reaching a crescendo. He wondered if she had discovered the truth. But looking at the hastily approaching wedding date, he forced himself to take comfort in the thought that it would be fine. They were getting married soon. His phone, lying on the table, vibrated incessantly, impossible to ignore. Seraphina spoke with an understanding tone. "Aren't you going to get that?" Warren picked it up, glanced at it, and quickly locked the screen. He knitted his brows and finally said apologetically, "Something came up at the office. I have to go take care of it." After he left, Seraphina got in her car and followed him. She saw him drive to a bar and, a short while later, carry a drunk Victoria out. "Don't you know you're allergic to alcohol? Why did you drink so much?" Victoria's eyes were brimming with tears, her makeup a mess. "And what about you? Didn't you say you never wanted to see me again? What are you doing here now?" She pushed at him weakly. Just go." Warren took a deep breath. He shook off Victoria's hand, but when she started crying about her regrets, he froze. He suddenly pressed her against the car, hissing through gritted teeth. "It's too late for regrets now. I'm marrying Seraphina. When I was in that car wreck, I begged you like a dog not to leave, but you wouldn't even look at me." Seraphina was the one who stayed by my side and took care of me. Seraphina watched the scene unfold quietly, watching them go from a tense argument to a passionate kiss, moving from outside the car to inside. The car rocked gently, the man's suppressed gasps and the woman's moans of pleasure drifting out. Her eyes stung and she blinked, but not a single tear would fall. "Miss Hartwell, we've found buyers for your properties. If you confirm, we can arrange the transaction in a few days." It was a text from the realtor. "Sounds good." In the days that followed, Warren spent his days with Seraphina confirming wedding plans and his nights with Victoria. It was as if it were their final indulgence, the two of them clinging to each other, inseparable. When Warren finally returned home, he found that the villa, which had been so warm and inviting under Seraphina's touch, had reverted to its original cold, sterile state. The cute decorations on the walls were gone. The sticky notes reminding him to smoke less had vanished, leaving only faint traces of adhesive on the tables. He froze. Then, like a madman, started shouting Seraphina's name as he rushed upstairs to the bedroom. Only after confirming that her clothes were still there did he breathe a sigh of relief. Overwhelmed by a mix of dread and relief, he lit a cigarette to calm his frayed nerves. When Seraphina returned, he immediately stubbed out the cigarette and rushed to embrace her. "Babe, where were you? You scared me to death." Seraphina sidestepped his embrace. The habitual words telling him not to smoke were on the tip of her tongue, but she swallowed them back. What did it matter? His life and death were no longer her concern. Warren didn't notice her unspoken words. He was still asking, what happened to all the things in the house? Seraphina hid the mockery on her face and explained with a smile, "Isn't this villa going to be our marital home? I thought I'd throw out the old things and buy some new decorations." Her answer soothed Warren's anxiety. He kissed her cheek and said regretfully, "Why did you even throw out the custom doll I first gave you? I really liked that gift." Seraphina lowered her eyes, her hands clenched into fists, nails digging into her palms. She had really liked the gifts he gave her, too. On her phone's still-lit screen was a picture Victoria had sent, a pregnancy test with 2 distinct lines. "Guess who he'll choose? Me or you?" A few days before the wedding was Arthur Preston's birthday. He threw a grand party, inviting many influential people. In the main hall, he stood with his cane, smiling as he had Seraphina stand to his right, with Warren on his other side. "Everyone," he said, raising his glass, "today is a day for celebration. Not only for my old man's birthday, but also to celebrate my grandson's upcoming wedding," he introduced Seraphina to the crowd. As you all know, 3 years ago, Warren had a terrible accident. If it weren't for Seraphina, I don't know what would have become of the Preston family. Seraphina, on behalf of the Preston family, "I'd like to propose the first toast to you," Seraphina politely declined. While in the crowd, Victoria's eyes were bloodshot, her hand gripping her glass so tightly it nearly shattered. Suddenly, she swapped her juice for a glass of hard liquor and shot a provocative glance at Warren. Just as she was about to drink, Warren shouted, "Vicky!" A triumphant smile spread across her face as she feigned innocence. "What's wrong?" Warren glanced nervously at Seraphina, his voice tinged with anger. "You can't drink. Have you forgotten?" The surrounding guests exchanged surprised looks. Even from a distance, they could feel the ambiguous tension between Warren and Victoria. They cast sympathetic glances at Seraphina. The murmurs grew louder, though some tried to laugh it off. Warren and Vicky grew up together. They're like brother and sister. Brother and sister? Seraphina scoffed. She'd never seen a brother and sister with a relationship quite like that. "Grandpa Preston, I have something to tell you," Victoria said, clutching her stomach. That's enough." The old man slammed his cane on the floor. "We'll talk about this later. It's not urgent." He didn't spare Victoria another glance, instead leading Seraphina away to mingle with the guests. Seraphina played the part of the true Preston granddaughter-in-law, accompanying Arthur. As she smiled and toasted with others, she saw Victoria slip out a side door from the corner of her eye. A moment later, Warren followed. When they reappeared, Victoria's lipstick was smudged, her face flushed with passion. After the party, Warren had the driver take Seraphina home first. Not long after they had driven off, Seraphina said she'd forgotten something and used it as an excuse to return to the Preston estate. Back at the estate, everyone was busy, and no one noticed her quietly standing outside the study. Inside, the family had just learned of Victoria's pregnancy, and a fierce argument had erupted. Beatrice Preston held the sobbing Victoria, comforting her gently before turning to persuade Arthur. "Dad, Vicky's pregnant. Why don't we just let Warren marry her? The Vance family isn't some small, insignificant family like the Hartwells. Didn't you want a marriage alliance with them from the start? If Warren's legs hadn't healed, that would be one thing. But now that he's recovered, he certainly deserves better." Richard Preston nodded in agreement. "Yes, Dad, Vicky is pregnant. Our family has to give the Vances an explanation. We can just pay that Hartwell girl off with some money." Arthur Preston had been silent, but now he slammed his hand on the desk. When the room fell quiet, he turned to Warren. "Warren, what are you thinking?" "I want to marry Seraphina." He dropped to his knees with a thud. "I've already made a mistake. I can't compound it." Arthur Preston nodded. "Seraphina saved your life, in a manner of speaking. If we don't marry her, our family will be mired in scandal. However," he tapped his cane, "I can't just stand by and watch a Preston heir be cast out. We'll have to ask Vicky to bear with it for a while. After you marry Seraphina, we can just find an excuse to divorce her." Arthur patted Victoria's shoulder and promised kindly, "Vicky, grandfather will make sure you have a wedding even grander than this one." Outside the door, a chill ran through Seraphina. Beatrice and the others had reacted just as she'd expected, but Arthur's words were a blow she hadn't anticipated. The one and only granddaughter-in-law, the support, the approval, it was all a lie. Unwilling to hear anymore, she stumbled out of the Preston estate. "Let's go back," she told the driver. The driver nodded and headed for the villa. Suddenly, a fierce wind kicked up, and a torrential downpour began. In a flash of lightning and a crash of thunder, the car's tires skidded, and it slammed head-on into a large tree. Seraphina's head hit the seat in front of her, and her consciousness began to fade. At the hospital, Warren's voice was a low growl. "What kind of treatment is this? Why isn't she waking up?" The attending physician wiped sweat from his brow, offering a placating smile. "Mr. Preston, please don't worry. Miss Hartwell just fainted from the impact. She'll wake up soon." The man sitting by the bedside had a dark expression. He squeezed Seraphina's hand. "Seraphina, you have to wake up. You promised to marry me. As long as you wake up, I'll do anything you ask. I promise." His promise was cut short by a knock on the door. Victoria entered the room holding a pregnancy report, her hand resting happily on her stomach. "Warren, look, our baby is so healthy." Warren's voice was icy. "What are you doing here? Didn't I tell you not to appear in front of Seraphina again? Don't you miss your baby and me?" Victoria shot a resentful glare at the unconscious Seraphina on the bed before turning to coo at Warren. "I wonder if the baby will look more like me or you." Her words touched him. He did want a child, but unfortunately, Seraphina had never become pregnant. He gently placed his hand on Victoria's belly, a first-time father's smile gracing his face. Neither of them noticed that on the hospital bed, Seraphina's eyelashes fluttered, her eyes taking in the scene. "Oh, my stomach hurts a little." Warren immediately grew tense. He scooped Victoria into his arms and rushed out to find a doctor. The IV drip was almost empty. Seraphina struggled to sit up and press the call button, but she was too weak. In the end, she had no choice but to pull the needle out of her hand herself. In her panicked state, she tumbled to the floor. The needle was yanked out roughly, and a small pool of blood formed on the floor from the back of her hand, a horrifying sight. A nurse heard the commotion and helped her up, then turned to angrily chastise the belatedly arriving Warren. "What kind of family member are you? How could you leave a patient alone in the room?" Warren's lips were pale. He trembled as he tried to staunch Seraphina's bleeding. "I'm sorry, I had to take care of something." Seraphina coolly pulled her hand away. "It's fine, you were busy, I understand." After all, a baby was a big deal. Guilt threatened to drown Warren. He stammered, unable to speak, as tears of regret splashed onto the floor. "Warren, I want to go home." Since discovering Victoria's existence, Seraphina hadn't called him by his first name so intimately. But now she smiled gently. "Take me home. We can't spend our wedding in a hospital." Warren never refused Seraphina's requests. Back at the villa, she changed into the custom-made wedding dress Warren had commissioned for her. The overhead lights shone down, highlighting her slender waist and beautiful face. The dress itself was magnificent, its skirt sparkling under the lights as if sewn with stars. "Is it beautiful?" Seraphina asked softly. "Beautiful?" Warren was so mesmerized he didn't dare blink, afraid that if he closed his eyes, the Seraphina before him would vanish like a dream. He had been with Victoria when Seraphina had her fitting, so he hadn't been there. This was the first time he had seen her in a wedding dress, and she was as beautiful as he had imagined. "Warren, in my hometown, there's a custom that the bride and groom can't see each other the day before the wedding. If you break the tradition, the marriage will be unhappy for a lifetime." Hearing this, Warren said solemnly, "Don't worry, I promise we'll be happy for a lifetime." He kissed her lips tenderly, but she turned her head away. He merely thought she was tired and didn't pay it much mind. In just one more day, they would become the most loving couple, blessed by the world. Warren reluctantly left the villa, driving to another of his properties. Seraphina, meanwhile, coolly removed the wedding dress and bought a train ticket to her hometown for the next day. The wedding venue was already set up, and she had bribed the MC. The Preston family wouldn't have to go to the trouble of finding fault with her to force a divorce, because she had never intended to actually marry Warren in the first place. The bride would be someone else, but it certainly wouldn't be her. She had already sent the villa staff away with various excuses. The next day, at the crack of dawn, Seraphina removed the bracelet from her wrist and placed it on the table. She picked up her suitcase and briskly hailed a taxi. Looking at the morning glow in the distance, she smiled, her eyes crinkling. Warren had given her many gifts, some delightful, some unpleasant. She sincerely hoped he would enjoy tomorrow's grand gift as well. This, Seraphina guaranteed, would be a wedding he would never forget. On the wedding day, Warren's eyelid twitched uncontrollably, his anxiety reaching its peak. Since parting with Seraphina 2 days ago, he hadn't received a single message from her. He scrolled through their chat history, only now slowly realizing that they hadn't really talked in a long time. Seraphina no longer texted him, asking when he would be back, nor did she share the lively, interesting details of her day. How are the preparations on the bride's side? The planner Warren addressed immediately contacted the villa and was told the bride was in the final stages of her makeup. Warren pressed his temples, trying to force down the bad feeling. He had indeed neglected Seraphina a great deal recently, but he had secretly vowed to make it up to her after they were married. He would take her to see the northern lights, to watch dolphins in the ocean, to all the places she loved. As for the baby in Victoria's belly, Warren lowered his gaze and habitually lit a cigarette. If Seraphina never got pregnant, he could register the child under her name. No matter what, he would not get a divorce. The auspicious time arrived. He straightened his clothes and stepped onto the stage, looking expectantly toward the main doors along with the guests. The doors slowly opened, and a petite figure in a wedding dress walked toward him. Isn't the bride Seraphina Hartwell? Why does this person look so much like? Are my old eyes deceiving me? Isn't that the Vance family's little girl? Victoria's parents, sitting in the audience, tensed up, looking at the bride in disbelief. They could mistake anyone, but not their own daughter. Victoria, who was supposed to be at home throwing a tantrum and boycotting the wedding, had somehow transformed into the bride. The whispers from the crowd didn't reach Warren on the stage. He was gazing tenderly at the bride walking toward him. Under the dazzling lights, everything was so beautiful, like a dream. "Warren!" A soft, shy voice pulled him back to reality, and his expression changed in an instant. "What are you doing here?" Faced with Warren's furious growl, Victoria flinched but then lifted her chin confidently. "It was always supposed to be me, don't you remember? You said when we were kids that you wanted me to be your bride when we grew up." Warren stared coldly at the woman before him. She wasn't as tall as Seraphina, nor as slender. To fit into the gown tailored for Seraphina, she was wearing 10-centimeter heels, and the bodice was so tight it left red marks on her chest, her flesh squeezed together. He looked away in disgust and muttered, "A poor copycat," then his gaze froze on Victoria's wrist. The jade bracelet Arthur Preston had given to Seraphina, the symbol of the Preston family's granddaughter-in-law, was being worn brazenly by Victoria. Ignoring her cry of pain, he forcibly pulled the bracelet off her hand. "What did you do to Seraphina?" Panic and rage filled Warren's heart. He threw off his jacket and rushed off the stage, pulling out his phone to frantically call Seraphina. But there was no answer. Victoria stood alone on the stage, drowned by the murmurs of the crowd. She bit her lip in frustration, nearly crushing the bouquet in her hands. Just as Warren was about to drive off to find Seraphina, Arthur Preston could take no more. He slapped his grandson across the face. "Enough," he hissed. "Haven't you embarrassed us enough? We have to go through with this now. You get back up there and marry Victoria." Arthur threatened Warren with his shares in the company, forcing him back onto the stage to cut their losses and give the Vance family an explanation. Under the glaring white lights, Warren's eyes were vacant. The MC's mouth opened and closed, likely saying words of congratulation, but he couldn't hear a single one. Only when Victoria shyly said, "I do," did he snap out of his daze. Seraphina was supposed to be standing there, but he didn't even know where she was. He caught Arthur's threatening gaze and the unfriendly looks from Victoria's parents. Finally, he closed his eyes, a single tear falling from the corner as he choked out, "I do too." The MC smiled and raised the microphone. "Please turn your attention to the big screen and witness the happy memories of the bride and groom." Victoria tensed. The last thing she wanted at her wedding was for the guests to see memories of Seraphina and Warren. She whispered urgently, "Don't play it, this is fine," but the MC just gave her a strange look. "Isn't this what the bride requested we play?" As they spoke, soothing music began to play, but it was jarringly mismatched with the explicit content on the screen. Every text Victoria had sent to Seraphina was projected onto the big screen, including their passionate bedroom photos, the video of them kissing outside the bar, and the recording of the Preston family's scheme in the study like water hitting a hot oil pan. The guests' chatter erupted with a buzz. "I knew there was something fishy about the last-minute bride swap. So the Preston boy and the Vance girl were hooking up all along. We all saw what Warren looked like when he was paralyzed. Seraphina Hartwell was the Preston family's great benefactor, and they just cast her aside like this. That hypocritical old man Arthur Preston makes me sick. I'm not staying for this farce." An elderly Mr. Wang was the first to leave, and seeing this, others felt there was no reason to stay either. They shook their heads, and one person, unable to contain his anger, even spat at Warren on the stage before leaving in a huff. Arthur, Richard, and Beatrice tried to stop them, but they were only met with cold glares. Dejected, Arthur raised his cane and brought it down hard on Warren's back. "You disgrace, I've never been so humiliated in my entire life. The Preston family's reputation is completely ruined because of you." Blow after blow landed squarely on Warren's body, a few even hitting his legs. But he felt no pain, his mind a chaotic void. So, Seraphina had known all along. He thought he had hidden it so well, but it had all been exposed right under her nose. Among the sordid images on the screen was a miscarriage report. On the very first day Victoria had sent her texts, Seraphina had gone to the hospital without hesitation and terminated their pregnancy. He gasped for breath, feeling as if he were drowning, suffocating under the weight of his own emotions. A searing pain shot through his leg. He lost his balance and stumbled to the ground. Warren could no longer hear the commotion around him. He didn't even know that Arthur had collapsed from a stress-induced heart attack. Richard and Beatrice frantically called an ambulance to take the old man away, and Victoria was taken home by her parents. The once lavish and romantic wedding venue was now a chaotic mess, with only the pathetic, kneeling figure of Warren left. A staff member took pity on him and approached. "Mr. Preston, everyone has left. What would you like to do?" Before he could finish, he saw Warren force himself to stand and limp away, driving off. His figure was desolate, a picture of despair and ruin. After the chaotic wedding, Arthur Preston was hospitalized from the shock, and Victoria, under the title of the Preston family's granddaughter-in-law, moved brazenly into the family estate. Warren lived alone in the cold villa. He had lived there for 4 years, but this was the first time he felt out of place. It felt too empty, too cold. When Seraphina was still there, she always decorated the house to be warm and bright. There were always fresh flowers she had cultivated herself on the table, and cute sticky notes on the mirror reminding him to be less angry and to smoke less. But now, all those familiar details were gone. Warren poured wine down his throat, Eleanor Hartwell's words echoing in his ears. "Yes, Seraphina is back, but we will never let you see her again. You were the one who pursued her. You were the one who deceived and betrayed her. From now on, we'll hit you every time we see you." He also heard that familiar voice beside Eleanor, but it was no longer gentle, only filled with cold indifference. "He's an irrelevant person. Just block him." The ashtray overflowed with cigarette butts, but nicotine and alcohol couldn't numb his nerves, they only deepened his regret. When Beatrice Preston entered the room, she found her son lying in a stupor amidst a pile of empty bottles. A flash of pity crossed her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by resentment for Seraphina. "Son, you need to pull yourself together. Don't grieve over that wretch." She ruined the reputation of the Preston Corporation and humiliated us in front of everyone. Your grandfather is still in the hospital because of her. Vicky is pregnant. If you won't think of yourself, at least think of the child." Seeing Warren stare blankly for a moment, she quickly pushed him into the bathroom. "Wash that smoke smell off and come back to the estate with me. We can't have the baby smelling it." Meanwhile, Victoria, who had finally married Warren as she wished, was not as happy as she had imagined. She didn't even dare to open her phone. Someone had secretly filmed the wedding and posted it online. Netizens had uncovered the identities of the bride and groom. The official account of the Preston Corporation was flooded with insults, and she had received countless private messages, each one a curse. "Go to hell, homewrecker, you and Warren are a perfect match of scumbag and bitch. You're locked in for life. I feel so sorry for Seraphina Hartwell. You're truly disgusting." She had even thought her parents would support her, since it was a marriage alliance with the Prestons, but instead, she was disowned. Her once doting parents had changed their tune, their faces filled with regret for ever having had her. How could the Vance family produce such a shameless daughter? "You've even ruined our family business. Since you're so desperate to marry Warren Preston, then sever ties with the Vance family and get out with that bastard child in your belly." None of this was how she had envisioned it, but at this point, her only option was to cling tightly to Warren. After days of anxiety at the estate, she finally saw Warren return. The sight of his dazed and disheveled appearance stung her eyes. She couldn't understand. She had known him for over 20 years, a childhood sweetheart. How could that not compare to Seraphina's mere 4 years of companionship? Besides, Seraphina had only helped him a bit when he was paralyzed. If it had been her, she could have done the same. Composing herself, Victoria touched her belly and forced a smile. "Warren, you're back. The baby and I missed you so much. The doctor said we'll be able to feel it move in a few more months." "I'm so excited." Warren hadn't even wanted to spare her a glance, but her words made him erupt. He grabbed her by the collar, hissing viciously, "Did you know that Seraphina and I were supposed to have a child? You killed that unborn baby, and why was it you at the wedding? Who gave you the nerve? Did you threaten Seraphina?" Victoria's face turned red, and she could barely breathe. Beatrice saw this and quickly had them pulled apart. After catching her breath, Victoria's eyes were filled with disappointment. She spoke with a bitter tone. "I love you. I want to stand by your side openly. What's wrong with that?" Then, a malicious smile spread across her face. "You didn't know, did you? It was Seraphina's idea for me to be the substitute bride. You really think she wanted to marry you?" Meeting Warren's incredulous gaze, she played a recording on her phone. In the recording, Seraphina's voice was weary and cold. "You wanted to marry Warren, didn't you? Then your wish is granted. Just come to the villa tomorrow and you'll be the bride." Finally, she said with a hint of a smile, "I wish you and Warren a long and happy life together." "Impossible," Warren slapped the phone out of Victoria's hand. He clutched his head in agony, muttering, "Seraphina loves me so much. How could she not want to marry me? I said I would make it up to her." He suddenly looked up, his eyes filled with a chilling coldness as he stared at Victoria. "You should never have come back." After that day, a semblance of peace returned. But even Mrs. Gable at the estate knew that the Preston family was like a taut string, ready to snap at any moment. At the office, Warren went about his work with a normal expression. The Preston family's reputation had plummeted, and their stock price was highly volatile. Many partners had withdrawn their cooperation, and the entire group was in a state of panic and chaos. Since his discharge from the hospital, Arthur Preston seemed to have aged 10 years. His once straight back was now slightly stooped. He no longer interfered in the daily affairs of the group, leaving everything to Warren and Richard. Hearing a knock on the door, Warren wearily pressed his temples. "Come in." The person who entered was in a white dress, with long hair cascading over her shoulders. Warren's eyes glazed over for a moment, and he blurted out, "Seraphina, what are you doing here?" Hearing Warren say her name, Victoria was so angry she almost smashed the insulated container in her hands on the floor. She forced a smile. "Warren, it's me. I was worried you were working too hard, so I had Mrs. Gable make you some restorative soup. You should drink it while it's hot." Warren closed his eyes, his voice weary. "Don't come here again. The online gossip hasn't completely died down. It wouldn't be good if someone saw you." But that one sentence made all of Victoria's pent-up grievances from the past few days explode. She didn't understand. She had married Warren fair and square, so why was she now living like a mistress? She couldn't be seen with her own husband, he wouldn't go shopping with her, and now she couldn't even come to his office. Unable to bear it any longer, she smashed the container against the wall, her eyes red as she demanded, "Warren, I'm your wife, why can't I come here?" These days, without her family's backing, Beatrice's attitude toward her had grown increasingly cold. She had been forced to suppress her princess-like temper and carefully try to please Warren. She had hoped this visit would be a chance to mend their relationship, but instead, this was the response she got. Mindful that this was the office, Warren kept his voice low but his tone was mocking. "Don't forget why I married you." Victoria froze, then burst into uncontrollable laughter. That's right. If Beatrice hadn't been afraid of the scandal of her marrying while heavily pregnant, she wouldn't have used the safety of Seraphina's family as a threat to force Warren to register the marriage. She and Warren were only legally married because of Seraphina's leverage. Is a usurping wretch really worth you pining over for so long? Victoria began frantically smashing everything in Warren's office. If I hadn't gone abroad, if you hadn't been angry with me, she would never have had the chance to seduce you. Her taking care of you was just a ploy, a poor, desperate social climber just trying to get money out of you. I've seen plenty of women like her, who does she think she is? Slap. Victoria clutched her face, stunned. Warren's eyes blazed with fury. He shot up from his chair, ignoring the sharp pain in his leg. He squeezed Victoria's neck fiercely, only stopping when her face turned red. "You have no right to judge her." Victoria collapsed onto the sofa, coughing wretchedly. Warren's eyes were devoid of any warmth as he pressed the intercom. "Have security drag this madwoman out of my office." Security arrived quickly. As the heavy door opened, the gossip of the employees outside drifted in. "This is karma, isn't it? Serves him right for cheating." I really liked Seraphina. She always brought us milk tea whenever she came. How could Mr. Preston be so blind? "Shh, be quiet, he might hear you." Even after hearing them, Warren didn't reprimand them. He enjoyed hearing these little tidbits about Seraphina from others. But perhaps due to the high-intensity work of the past few days, his mind was too tense. The words around him grew fuzzy, and his leg began to throb. He swayed, then suddenly collapsed. "Seraphina, are you going out to paint again today?" Seraphina, with her drawing board on her back, smiled and nodded. The anti-hanging laundry teased her. "Where's young Ethan? Isn't he usually attached to your hip?" Speak of the devil. The words were barely out of her mouth when Ethan nightly hurried over. He took the drawing board from Seraphina and carried her art supplies. "Why didn't you tell me you were going out to paint?" His voice held a hint of hidden grievance. "I just finished an online meeting, and when I turned around, you were gone. Don't do that again." Seraphina looked at the man before her with amusement. She had seen him in his professional element. He was decisive when giving tasks, and his interactions with subordinates were a mix of authority and coldness that inspired both awe and loyalty. But this same man lowered his defenses only for her, even softening his voice when he spoke to her. The aunties around them burst into laughter, teasing them. "Ethan, you still haven't won Seraphina over? You've been in town for months now. You need to step up your game, young man." Ethan returned their smiles. "I'm working on it. Ladies, please put in a good word for me. If it works out, we'll be sure to treat you all to wedding candy." The string of jokes made Seraphina's face flush. She gave Ethan a glare that held no real threat and turned to walk ahead. Clearwater was not only scenically beautiful, but also had fresh, clean air. The few months she had spent here had nearly erased all memories of the capital city. She glanced at Ethan, who was following closely behind. The heat in her ears subsided, but she couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder. Who would have thought he would be so persistent as to actually follow her to Clearwater for an extended stay? After she had fled her own wedding, she returned to her parents. Her mother, feeling sorry for her, didn't immediately push her into dating again. But by a stroke of luck, when she visited her old high school homeroom teacher, she happened to run into the tech mogul who was there to donate to their alma mater. The teacher praised him with a smile. "Ethan Knightley is a smart kid. I hear the company he started is quite large. He hasn't forgotten his roots, either. He donates a large sum to the school every year." Seeing him walk over, the teacher's eyes lit up and she made the introductions. "Come, Ethan, this is an upperclassman of yours. Her name is..." Ethan squinted his eyes and let out a light laugh. "I know. He extended his hand to Seraphina. "Hello, Seraphina. My name is Ethan Knightley. I'm also your blind date." The teacher's eyes darted between them, and she took a knowing sip of her water. Seraphina felt a bit awkward. Mindful of her feelings, Ethan didn't say much more, only inviting her to a nearby coffee shop after they left the campus. Sipping a rich espresso, Seraphina thought it over and decided to lay all her cards on the table. She had no intention of hiding her past relationships and wanted him to make an informed choice. After she had briefly summarized her past, the man across from her had a deep, dark look in his eyes. He murmured, "I always thought you were happy all these years. If only I had known." His voice was soft, and Seraphina, lost in her own thoughts, didn't quite hear him. After much deliberation, she confessed honestly, "I'm not looking to start a new relationship right away. It wouldn't be fair to either of us." "It's okay." Ethan smiled nonchalantly, his gaze fixed on Seraphina. "I can wait, and I hope you won't refuse my pursuit. Not all men in this world are like your ex. I'll prove that to you." And so, after that, Seraphina often received bouquets of flowers that perfectly matched her taste, or pieces of exquisitely designed jewelry. She and Ethan visited art galleries together, and she was surprised to find that the seemingly artless man could offer insightful critiques of the artwork. They also explored the snack street near their old school, and in terms of taste and values, they were incredibly compatible. For Seraphina, this relationship was moving too fast. She needed time to clear her head. So she chose to go to Clearwater to paint, but she hadn't expected that after arranging his company affairs, Ethan would also buy a plane ticket and rent the guest house right next to hers. Every morning, when she opened her window, she would see his smiling face across the way. Just like now, as she painted the sea of clouds in the distance, awestruck by the magnificent sunset, she didn't notice that she, with a paintbrush in hand, was the one and only view in Ethan's eyes. Early one morning, Seraphina woke up to find breakfast already on the table. It was a local specialty, rice noodles, from a shop that was a half-hour drive from the guest house. Next to the noodles was a bouquet of freshly picked wildflowers tied together with a string. Though not as exquisitely wrapped as from a florist, it had a unique, rustic charm. She lowered her eyes, her heart like a calm lake rippled by a single stone. "Let's eat together." Seraphina called Ethan over from next door and divided the noodles into 2 bowls. She had merely liked a video recommending the rice noodles while scrolling through social media yesterday, and the observant man beside her had remembered. A dozen hours later, that very bowl of noodles from her saved videos was on her dining table. After the meal, she set up her easel to paint as usual, while Ethan took out his laptop for remote work. Even without conversation, a quiet, warm atmosphere enveloped them. Seraphina's phone pinged with a notification for a new follower. She opened her social media account and saw that the new follower's username was a simple, blunt W. After checking the IP address, she immediately knew it was Warren. Seraphina frowned. When she first returned to her parents, Warren couldn't reach her by phone, so he tried calling her parents instead. After being scolded by them a few times, he changed tactics and started sending gifts to her house. Her parents, of course, refused them, sending back the expensive supplements and luxury gift sets untouched. After several attempts, Warren seemed to have finally given up on these gestures that he thought were affectionate, but were actually just a nuisance. But now, for some reason, he had started following her social media account. Although Ethan was working, he was also keeping an eye on Seraphina. Seeing her displeased expression, he asked with concern, "What's wrong? What did you see?" Seraphina decisively blocked Warren's account and replied calmly, "Nothing, just saw something dirty." When she was online, the algorithm often pushed news about the Preston Corporation's current situation to her. She knew the Prestons were in a bad state, with their stock price plummeting and key technical staff being poached by competitors. It was easy to imagine the chaos the family was in. When she saw this information, she didn't feel the satisfaction she might have expected. Instead, she calmly marked the posts as not interested. She knew she had truly let go of the past. Ethan finished his meeting and got up to pour her a cup of steeped herbal tea. Seraphina accepted it with a smile. Even the most painful past could be healed by present happiness. "I might have to go back for a few days." Ethan said it like a negotiation. "There's an internal company meeting that I need to be at." Probably thinking of Seraphina's past experience, he even pulled out his phone to show her chat logs with other shareholders. He didn't care about any so-called business secrets, just laid it all out for her to see. The usually elegant and unflappable Ethan now had a look of foolish sincerity on his face. Seraphina burst out laughing and took his hand. "I trust you. Work is important. Go back if you need to." She paused, then said firmly, "When you come back, I'll give you my answer." In the days after Ethan left, Seraphina's life seemed unchanged. But every morning when she opened her window, she would pause for a moment, only because the familiar smiling face was no longer across from her. She went out to paint alone, and when she had free time, she would wander through the nearby town. Seeing beautiful wildflowers by the roadside, she instinctively turned. "How about we paint this?" Seeing no one behind her, Seraphina laughed at herself. She took a picture and sent it to Ethan. A simple flower with no flowery words, yet it conveyed a sense of longing. Far away in the capital city, Ethan had just finished a long meeting. He didn't even have time for a sip of water before pulling out his phone. His eyes crinkled into a smile when he saw the message. "It's beautiful." He closed his eyes, intending to rest for a moment, but his mind had a will of its own, constantly drifting back to Seraphina. Her sparkling eyes when she saw a beautiful landscape, her puffed-up cheeks when she ate, her serene expression when she painted. He didn't need to think of the details. The vivid scenes just appeared before him. After all, she was the person he had held in his heart for 10 years. He remembered her every smile and frown. If he had known what a bastard Warren was, he would have snatched Seraphina back. No matter the cost, Mr. Knightley, a lot of people have their eyes on this project. Are we really going to compete for it? Of course. Ethan snapped back to the present and made a decisive call. Something had happened to Warren Preston, the head of the Preston Corporation. According to reliable sources, he had been hospitalized for 3 days. Now, everyone at the Preston company was in a state of panic. Anyone with any ability was actively looking for a new job, afraid the company would go bankrupt. Their competitors were eyeing the Preston Corporation's projects, all wanting to tear off a piece of flesh from the family and get a slice of the pie. Ethan was one of them. Among all the competitors, his company, though only a few years old, was powerful and the one not to be underestimated. "Let's continue the meeting." Ethan rubbed his temples. The thought of Seraphina filled him with endless motivation. "Let's finalize the bid. We should be able to win the project this time." After several rounds of fierce competition, Ethan's employees couldn't hide the excitement on their faces. They had succeeded at the celebration dinner that night. The private room was filled with people drinking and chatting, every face beaming with joy and satisfaction. Only Ethan remained calm, checking his phone from time to time. He was anxious, but his face showed no sign of it. It had been almost 5 hours since Seraphina said she was going into the mountains to paint, and she hadn't replied to him. It was getting late. Ethan tried not to let his mind wander, but he was still worried. "Seraphina, please just send a message back." As if in answer to his prayer, a notification finally popped up on his phone, but it was a news alert. Heavy rain in Clearwater recently. A landslide has just occurred in the eastern region. Ethan shot up in alarm, startling the employees around him. Their boss, though young, was usually inscrutable. This was the first time they had seen him look so pale. "Book me the next flight to Clearwater," Ethan instructed his secretary with a grim expression. He didn't even grab his coat as he rushed out. "To the airport, now." The driver complied immediately, driving with a skill he had never known he possessed. On the plane, Ethan's eyelid was still twitching. He took a deep breath. For the first time, 3 hours felt like an eternity. The moment he landed, he hailed a cab to Seraphina's guest house. Outside, a storm raged, mirroring the turmoil in his heart. He prayed that Seraphina was already down from the mountain, safe and sound in the guest house. But when he arrived, she was nowhere to be found. The fear that his worst guess might be true made it hard for Ethan to breathe. He wiped his face and rushed outside, only to bump into someone. "Ethan, what are you doing back now?" Through the curtain of rain, he saw her face filled with concern. He threw all restraint and propriety to the wind, pulling Seraphina into a tight embrace. Realizing what had happened, Seraphina explained gently, "A house at the foot of the mountain was destroyed. I went to volunteer, and I must have dropped my phone somewhere." "I'm sorry, Ethan. I didn't mean to make you worry." The overwhelming joy of having her back safe washed over Ethan. He let out a muffled laugh and, on impulse, said, "Let's get married." The words were barely out of his mouth when he realized how inappropriate it sounded. He was about to say he was joking when he heard a sweet voice by his ear. "Okay," Ethan froze. He looked at her in disbelief, meeting her determined gaze. It took him a long moment to process it before he burst out laughing. A love at first sight from 10 years ago had finally been reciprocated. It wasn't until the next day that Ethan had calmed down slightly. A thought occurred to him, and he casually brought it up. "On my way back to the capital, I overheard some people talking. They said Warren Preston can't walk again." He watched Seraphina closely, afraid of missing even the slightest change in her expression. But Seraphina showed no reaction, as if Warren were a complete stranger. "He deserves it," she commented coolly. "What? Complications?" Beatrice Preston shed her usual mask of an elegant socialite and shrieked at the doctor. "My son's surgery was a success. How can there be complications? Do you know this is a critical time for our family? Can you bear the responsibility for a misdiagnosis?" The doctor frowned. He hated dealing with unreasonable family members, but he explained patiently, "We informed the family of the potential risks. Although the probability of complications is low, it's not zero. Mr. Preston's girlfriend was here that day. I remember she consulted me multiple times after his discharge on how to avoid complications in his daily life." The doctor turned to look at the visibly pregnant Victoria. "Miss Hartwell, didn't you take a lot of notes, huh?" The doctor, who had been focused on the patient, hadn't paid much attention to the pregnant woman. But now, looking closely, he realized the person by Warren's side was not the Miss Hartwell from before at all. Victoria uncomfortably used her hair to hide her face. She had already heard the nurses whispering. "That's not Miss Hartwell, is it? These rich people, just a bunch of ungrateful jerks. She looks so spoiled. I doubt she can do a tenth of what Miss Hartwell did." Lying in the hospital bed, Warren slowly opened his eyes. Once again, he couldn't feel his legs. The painful memories he had tried so hard to forget came rushing back. "Will my son's legs get better?" Looking at Beatrice's anxious face, the doctor sighed. "I can't be sure. Let's take the patient home to recuperate for now. Once his vitals are stable, we can try another surgery." "Mr. Preston," the doctor instructed him, "remember, no smoking or drinking. And you must do your physical therapy on time to prevent muscle atrophy." "Write it down," Beatrice glared at Victoria. "Go ask the doctor about the rehabilitation methods. Why do I have to remind you of everything?" Victoria suppressed her irritation and followed the doctor to his office, but she could still hear Beatrice muttering behind her, "Can't even do this one simple thing. Useless, not like Seraphina." She clenched her fists but felt helpless. Times had changed. She had lost her parents as her biggest support and now had to rely completely on the Preston family to survive. If she could get Warren to walk again, like Seraphina did, and with the baby in her belly, the Prestons would have to take her seriously. Maybe she could even show her parents her value and win back their support. With this resolve, hope rekindled in her heart. In the hospital room, Warren's face was pale, his expression listless. Beatrice wiped away tears as she couldn't help but complain, "You'd already quit smoking and drinking, hadn't you? When did you start again? And your legs, why didn't you protect them?" Warren stared at the pure white walls of the room. Remorse turned into thousands of sharp needles, ruthlessly piercing his heart. He hadn't been without hesitation before choosing to betray Seraphina and get with Victoria. Victoria was the unattainable white moonlight of his youth. At first, he just wanted to catch up with her. But as they spent more time together, he felt a long-lost sense of thrill and excitement. Victoria was coquettish and wild. She took him clubbing, and even though she was allergic to alcohol, she would drink with him. "Life is for living." You used to love drinking so much. Your liquor cabinet was full of famous brands. Why did you become so obedient just because someone told you not to drink? She wasn't as rigid and dogmatic as Seraphina, who would forbid him from doing anything the doctor advised against. Seraphina would only refuse him gently. "No, you can't do any strenuous exercise right now. You need to protect your knees." Or she would suddenly show up when he was out with his friends. "Warren can't drink right now. I'll drink this one for him." That gentleness felt suffocating, and his friends even labeled him as whipped. He wanted a breath of fresh air, so he naturally accepted Victoria's invitations, one after another. And each time they went further until everything blew up. Warren closed his eyes, bitterness spreading through his heart. Beside him, Beatrice tried to comfort him carefully. "It's okay. You stood up last time. You can do it again this time." Victoria, who had returned to the room, was also full of confidence. She believed she was in no way inferior to Seraphina. "Warren, don't worry. I'll definitely help you recover." Neither of them noticed the suppressed frustration in Warren's eyes, nor his tightly clenched fists. Warren began his rehabilitation again. The elation he felt after standing up the first time had almost made him forget the pain of rehab and his own volatile emotions. After he threw the water glass from his bedside table at the physical therapist for the umpteenth time, the therapist, soaked and scalded, finally had enough and left in a fury. "Mrs. Preston, you'd better find someone else." She held out her arm, which was covered in bruises from being hit by objects and blisters from being scalded by hot water. "No amount of money is worth this job. I'm afraid I'll take the money but won't live to spend it." Beatrice felt no guilt. Instead, she retorted angrily, "I pay you such a high salary, you should just take it. If you won't do it, plenty of others will. You really think our family can't do without you?" The therapist efficiently packed her things and sneered, "Your family is notoriously difficult to work for in our circle. Go ahead and hire someone else." "I'd like to see who can last a month in your house." Beatrice watched the therapist leave, her chest heaving with anger. She muttered curses like "little bitch" under her breath, but her hands were already typing a message to the butler. "Hire another live and physical therapist." A short while later, the butler replied with a troubled expression. "Ma'am, the one who just left was the only applicant." Beatrice's face darkened. She then saw Victoria ordering Mrs. Gable to prepare afternoon tea, and her anger flared. She stormed up to Victoria. "You were the one who insisted on marrying Warren. Now your husband is lying in bed, and you have the nerve to be enjoying yourself." She shooed Victoria upstairs. "Go take care of him." Victoria clutched her stomach and reluctantly went upstairs. After Warren was discharged, she had confidently taken over his care for a few days, but she quickly started complaining and backing out. She had never expected that a paralyzed Warren would be so ill-tempered. If anything was not to his liking, he would curse and yell, and once he almost hurt the baby in her belly. Not to mention having to bathe him, massage his leg muscles, and push him in his wheelchair to get some sun and fresh air. Victoria had been raised as a pampered princess. When had she ever done such menial work? She had finally managed to use her pregnancy as an excuse to get Beatrice to hire a therapist. But who would have thought that in just 2 weeks, Warren would have driven the person away? Opening the door, she cautiously glanced at the half-reclining Warren, then picked up a bowl of porridge to feed him. She had no patience, simply thrusting the spoon toward his mouth as if completing a task. "Eat." Having just vented his anger, Warren was indeed hungry. He tried a sip and found the porridge was cold. His temper flared, and he instinctively compared the woman before him to Seraphina. If it were Seraphina, she would have checked the temperature of the porridge before feeding it to him. She would have also prepared water for him, afraid he might get thirsty. She wouldn't have a long face like Victoria, but would always be smiling gently, a sight that could lift anyone's spirits. Warren twitched his fingers and suddenly flipped the bowl over. The thick porridge splattered everywhere on the quilt, the floor, and even on Victoria's face. Victoria closed her eyes and let out a hysterical scream. "Do you know how much trouble it is to clean this up? I have to help you to the bathroom to bathe, and I have to lift you into the wheelchair. Do you have any idea how hard that is?" She called for Mrs. Gable to clean up the mess and, ignoring Warren's look of utter disappointment, went out to find some peace and quiet. Beatrice heard the commotion from downstairs. Seeing the disheveled Victoria, she couldn't help but scold her. "You can't even do this one simple thing. What are you good for?" Seraphina used to take care of Warren so well, making him comfortable and content. She did it so effortlessly, yet you complain and make excuses. "If it weren't for the fact that you're pregnant, I would have." Victoria bit her lips so hard she nearly drew blood, barely suppressing the resentment that threatened to spill out. She hung her head and walked into her own bedroom without a word. And in his room, Arthur Preston, who was aware of everything but chose to ignore it, let out a deep sigh. The news of Warren's second paralysis was leaked to the media, causing a huge stir online. Unlike the gloating netizens, the shareholders of the Preston Corporation were eyeing the company's control. Richard Preston practically lived at the office, busy from dawn till dusk. Beatrice was also frantic, wishing Warren could stand up that very second. Hurry up and help him with his rehab. Victoria, who was given the task, looked troubled. I don't know how. If you don't know, then learn. Beatrice had found a thick medical book from somewhere. If Victoria hadn't dodged quickly, it would have been thrown at her. Read the book or go consult a doctor. Victoria flipped through a few pages and closed the book, forcing a smile. This book is so technical. I studied art. How am I supposed to understand it? Beatrice couldn't control her anger and yelled, Seraphina could understand it, why can't you? She went to the hospital every few days to talk to the doctors. Why can't you? Victoria's resentment finally boiled over. Seraphina, you compare me to her in everything. You were the one who held my hand and wanted me to be your daughter-in-law. You were the one who made Warren marry me. If you miss Seraphina so much, then go get her back. From his wheelchair, Warren watched this farce with cold eyes. He rolled his wheels, picking up the book from the floor. The pages were filled with medical jargon he couldn't understand, but in the margins, there were neat, elegant handwriting filling the blank spaces with notes and thoughts. This method is good. I'll try to persuade Warren to try it next time. So there's a technique to massage. I'll go ask the doctor tomorrow. You can do it. Seraphina, you can do it. Warren, there's still hope of standing up. We can't give up. Besides these dense notes, she had also used a pen to circle and underline key points. Warren's tears soaked the pages, blurring the ink. It was only then that he clearly understood what he had lost. That gentleness had never been a cage woven for him, but the essential sun and rain of his life. Get out, all of you, get out. He frantically spun his wheelchair, smashing everything in the room. Antique vases and ornaments were pushed to the floor, shattering into useless fragments. Fruit was thrown against the walls, leaving conspicuous stains. Beatrice watched her crazed son, backing away in fear. She accidentally bumped into Victoria behind her. Victoria stumbled and fell to the floor, clutching her stomach and wailing, my baby, my baby." The entire Preston estate descended into chaos. The staff had to dodge the frantic Warren, protect Beatrice, and rush Victoria to the hospital. The chaotic scene ended with Warren falling out of his wheelchair, his body covered in cuts from the broken shards on the floor. Enough. Arthur Preston finally couldn't bear the farce any longer. He stood up, stooped, and slammed his cane heavily on the floor. He said to Beatrice with grim determination, "Go get Seraphina back. Beg her to come and see Warren." At that moment, Seraphina, who had just returned home, was blushing as she introduced Ethan Knightley to her parents. Her parents were all smiles, their eyes crinkling with delight. Ethan, dressed in a formal suit, sat stiffly on the Hartwell sofa. He took out the gifts he had bought and arranged them neatly on the table. "Uncle, this is tea for you. Auntie, these are some supplements and jewelry." He said it simply, but her parents could see the gifts were incredibly valuable. They had been shocked when they opened the door. The hallway was packed with gift boxes, and Ethan stood amidst the pile, smiling shyly. The neighbors who saw it couldn't help but tease, "Old David, you found a great son-in-law." "I saw his car. It must be worth millions." The more Elinor looked at Ethan, the more satisfied she was. She not only warmly invited him to stay for dinner, but also set a date for the parents to meet. After dinner, Seraphina linked her arm with Ethan's, her heart filled with a mix of sweetness and anxiety. Compared to her 4 years with Warren, she had only really been with Ethan for a few months. Things were moving too fast. A 4-year relationship could be betrayed. What about a few months? As if he knew what she was thinking, Ethan ignored the bustling crowd on the street and pulled her into a tight embrace. "Seraphina, my feelings for you are not just a matter of a few months." Seraphina looked up in confusion and felt him place a tender kiss on the top of her head. In the distance, Beatrice, pushing Warren's wheelchair, cursed, "That harbinger of ruin after destroying our family, she's latched onto someone else." From his wheelchair, Warren stared in disbelief, his hands gripping the armrests so tightly his veins bulged. His Seraphina was letting another man kiss her. Beatrice led her entourage to block their path. She said haughtily, "Come back to the Preston estate with me. Warren is sick again." Ethan shielded Seraphina behind him, a scornful laugh escaping his lips. "If he's sick, he should see a doctor. What do you want with our Seraphina?" Besides, who do you think you are to be able to summon my fiancé? Beatrice sneered, her face full of disdain. And who do you think you are? Her butler's face paled. He leaned in and whispered something in her ear. Only then did Beatrice drop her contemptuous expression, her gaze on Seraphina now unreadable. You're quite something. After seducing my son, you immediately jumped to a bigger fish. Seraphina didn't even glance at her. She took Ethan's hand, ready to leave. Mrs. Preston, if you're here to ask for a favor, you should at least have the attitude of someone asking for a favor. Seeing that Beatrice was about to spew more insults, Warren, who had been watching from a distance, shouted, "Mom, that's enough." He looked down at his own legs, feeling a deep sense of shame, afraid to see disgust in Seraphina's eyes. He didn't want to see the broad-shouldered, able-bodied man beside her either. He felt utterly inadequate. Let's go back. Even though Seraphina's gaze never once landed on Warren, Ethan still felt a pang of anxiety. He was afraid she would be swayed by Warren's pitiful state, her heart softening, and that she would abandon him again. So he rushed the wedding plans, eager to secure his position. Seraphina looked at the anxious man, feeling a mix of amusement and happiness. This was her real wedding. Every detail was infused with her and Ethan's care. From the small candy boxes to the grand venue decorations, everything was decided by them together. While they were busy and happy in their new home, the Preston household was in utter turmoil. After returning home, Warren fell into a deep depression, his temper alternating between violent outbursts and suicidal despair. How did it come to this? It wasn't like this last time. After finding Warren attempting to end his life yet again, Beatrice had all the sharp objects in the house removed. She sat by his bed, wiping her tears, completely bewildered. The last time he was paralyzed, although her son was moody at first, he had adapted well later on, even joking with the family. Why was he so despondent this time? Arthur Preston couldn't hold back any longer and slapped Beatrice across the face. "Fool, you absolute fool, I told you to go get Seraphina back. Is this how you handle things?" Mrs. Miller, who had worked at the villa, had been transferred to the estate. She couldn't help but speak up. "Mrs. Preston, Miss Hartwell truly did so much for him that you never saw." Back then, she was so worried about him taking his own life that she didn't get a full night's sleep for the first 2 years. Not to mention the rehab, massages, bathing him. Which of those didn't she do herself? When he refused to take his medicine, she would coax him bit by bit until he took it. Beatrice's face flushed with shame. In the first few days after Warren's accident, she had been genuinely sad for her son. But soon after, Seraphina had gradually taken over all aspects of his care. So she stopped asking, even moving them into the villa so they wouldn't be a disturbance at the estate. Warren's eyes were filled with deep pain. He squeezed them shut, not daring to reminisce any further. "From now on, you do the same." Beatrice yanked Victoria, who was pretending to be invisible, and ordered her harshly. Victoria silently lowered her head, not daring to speak. After being knocked over by Beatrice, she had gone into premature labor. The baby was not only small and frail, but also had a congenital defect. The doctor had sighed and asked helplessly, "Didn't you prepare for pregnancy? You didn't even quit smoking and drinking." After seeing the baby, Richard Preston had simply walked away. Arthur acted as if he hadn't seen a thing and didn't even ask. She had hoped that, after giving birth, the Preston family would reward her with a villa or some priceless jewelry. But all her beautiful dreams had vanished upon seeing the baby's appearance. Every day, she had to endure Beatrice pointing at her and calling her a jinx, and her child a little monster. Victoria gritted her teeth in hatred. This was not the life she wanted. She couldn't take it anymore seeing Warren's condition worsening. Arthur, along with Richard and Beatrice, went to Seraphina's house to apologize in person. He bowed low, walking unsteadily toward Seraphina. "Seraphina, the Preston family has wronged you. Grandfather has brought them here to apologize." He tugged at Richard and shot a glare at Beatrice. Thinking of the recent hardships, Beatrice finally dropped her pretense. She sobbed, tears and snot running down her face, her heavy foundation streaking. "Seraphina, it was my fault. I was wrong. I'm kneeling before you now, begging you to go see Warren, please. Without you, he really can't go on." With that, she fell to her knees, clutching the hem of Seraphina's skirt, pleading desperately. Seraphina was merciless. She took a step back and said coldly, I've told you I'm not a doctor. If he needs medical attention, he should go to a hospital. Why come to me? Besides, Warren is married to Victoria. Asking me to go instead of letting his wife take care of him is just absurd. Richard stepped forward. Seraphina, you can't say that. After all, you and Warren were almost husband and wife. You should have some lingering feelings. Seraphina laughed mockingly. Lingering feelings. The moment Warren cheated, any possibility of reconciliation between us was gone forever. You, Arthur, blocked the enraged Richard and pleaded in a low voice. Seraphina, we truly know we were wrong. Ethan had been listening from inside for a while. Seeing them shamelessly pestering Seraphina, he stepped out and stood protectively by her side, his tone derisive. You truly know you were wrong? Before the three of them could reply, he answered his own question. No, you're just afraid your company is about to go under. At his words, the three Prestons' faces turned beet red. They couldn't bear to stay any longer and turned to leave in disgrace, like beaten dogs. Ethan snorted and slammed the door shut. He buried his head in Seraphina's neck and took a deep breath. I hate these clueless people. If they come back, just call the police. Seraphina nodded slightly, then let out a small cry as her feet left the ground. Ethan easily lifted her with one arm and strode toward the bedroom, resuming the important business they had been interrupted from. The Preston household, however, was shrouded in gloom. Under the torment of the volatile Warren, many of the family's housekeepers and drivers had resigned. Only the old retainers who had been with the family for decades remained. The once lively and bustling estate was now as quiet as a haunted house. No one wanted to cross Warren and be subjected to his verbal and physical abuse. Seeing that Warren was showing no signs of recovery, Richard decided to formally introduce his illegitimate son to Arthur. He wanted to officially make his son the heir and let him take over the Preston Corporation. When Beatrice found out, she stormed into the office like a madwoman and got into a physical fight with Richard, her long nails leaving scratches all over his face. So the apple doesn't fall far from the tree with a father like you. No wonder your son is a cheater. You bring that wretch here today. I want to see what kind of woman could keep you in a gilded cage for over 20 years. Richard covered his face and called for security. Get this shrew out of here. Don't let her embarrass herself in the company. Security guards restrained Beatrice and dragged her out of the office, but her curses still echoed through the company. More than one employee recorded the scene and posted it online. Netizens commented with a mix of pity and scorn. Mrs. Preston used to be so poised and dignified. Now she's like a madwoman. It's both pitiful and pathetic. How is she pitiful? She wasn't like this when she found out her son was cheating. She even encouraged him to let the homewrecker take over. You don't know the pain until the knife is cutting you. Now she can finally empathize with Seraphina. The Preston family was in chaos, with everyone looking out for themselves. No one noticed that Victoria had been out of sight for a while, nor did they notice that valuable items were disappearing every few days. Warren had no heart for these domestic trifles. His only source of joy and pain now was having someone push his wheelchair so he could secretly follow Seraphina. Ethan's company was busy these days, so Seraphina had arranged to go shopping with her college roommates. They hadn't seen each other in a long time, but their bond was still strong. After catching up, the conversation inevitably turned to Warren. One roommate sighed, Warren was so devoted to you back then. I really thought you two would make it to the end. Another nudged her arm. It's a good thing they broke up. Now Seraphina has time to hang out with us. Unlike before, when every time we asked her out, she was either worried about Warren or had to take him to the hospital. Seraphina smiled faintly. It was true that in the past, she had no personal time because she was taking care of Warren. At the time, she had been happy to do it. Now, she just felt foolish. Her friends were considerate of her feelings and didn't dwell on the topic, instead turning to gossip excitedly about Ethan. Show us a picture of your fiancé. How did you two meet? Seraphina's ears turned red. She shyly showed them a candid photo of Ethan she had taken. This is him. He was my blind date. Her friend's eyes lit up with praise. He's so handsome and so successful at such a young age, but one of them frowned in thought. He looks so familiar. I feel like I've seen him somewhere before. Seraphina didn't pay it much mind and replied with a smile, maybe on a business news channel. The four of them went shopping after their meal, laughing and joking along the way, as if they were back in their carefree college days. While waiting for a movie to start, a little boy suddenly appeared in front of Seraphina. He tilted his head and opened his palm, revealing a small decorative charm. "Miss, is this yours?" Seraphina was taken aback. She saw that the chain on her bag was empty. Only the connecting ring remained where the charm used to be. It wasn't anything valuable, but it was handmade by Ethan. He had learned to make it from a local potter in Clearwater during his free time. He had ruined several batches before finally making this perfect one. She smiled gratefully at the boy and bent down to pat his head. "Thank you so much. This is very important to me. Let me buy you some ice cream." The boy shook his head and pointed behind him. "I didn't find it. An uncle asked me to give it to you. He was right. Where did he go?" From a distance, Warren saw the boy point in his direction and quickly had the driver push him somewhere else. When things quieted down, he wheeled himself back and secretly watched Seraphina's back. She was holding the boy's hand, leading him to buy ice cream, her head tilted as she listened to him, a gentle smile on her face. A bitter taste filled Warren's mouth. His chest felt tight, like he had swallowed an unripe apricot. His fingers unconsciously rubbed together, the feel of the ceramic charm still on his palm. It was a simple ceramic sunflower. When he first picked it up, he had mentally scoffed at his rival, thinking it was a cheap and unimpressive gift. But then he saw the back of the flower, two fingerprints, one large and one small, partially overlapping to form a heart, and he fell silent. Through this handmade charm, he could almost see the two of them looking at each other with a smile as they pressed their thumbs into the clay. He felt like a thief, peeking at someone else's happiness, a happiness that once belonged to him. He waited in the same spot even after Seraphina and her friends had gone into the movie theater. His driver, Charles, asked tentatively from behind, "Should we go back?" Warren's eyes were filled with disgust as he slowly shook his head. The Preston estate was in constant turmoil these days. Richard's mistress and his illegitimate son had moved in openly. Beatrice, in her 50s, had reignited her youthful fighting spirit, determined to win back her husband's heart. Arthur Preston feigned illness and refused to leave his room, no longer wanting to deal with the mess. He suddenly remembered Beatrice hysterically blaming him a few days ago. "Our family was ruined by your wedding. Actually, it had nothing to do with the wedding." From the moment he cheated, the facade of a harmonious, loving family had slowly been stripped away. Everyone in the Preston family, including himself, had their hypocrisy and selfishness exposed. The crowd pouring out of the theater at the end of the movie finally startled Warren out of his thoughts. He had Charles push him to a secluded spot, where he greedily watched Seraphina's back through the crowd. Seraphina was pulled out of the mall by her roommates. She asked, confused, "What's wrong? Why are you all being so mysterious?" Her roommates exchanged a smile but didn't explain. It was evening, and the sky was filled with a brilliant sunset, as if twilight had torn the clouds to shreds, scattering millions of glowing scales across the heavens. Everyone stopped to admire the beautiful scenery, but even more so, the man in the center of the square holding a large bouquet of gardenias. Seraphina stared, stunned. Ethan was in a formal suit, a visible trace of nervousness on his face. Fireworks shot into the sky, exploding into the shape of her first award-winning painting, followed by the second, then the third. It was a fireworks art exhibition just for her. Ethan cleared his throat. "The last proposal was too rushed. I wanted to do it formally this time." He looked straight at Seraphina. "Will you marry me?" Her answer was to throw herself into his arms, tears streaming down her face. No words were needed. Everyone present applauded for them. In an unnoticed corner, Warren covered his face, sobbing silently. So this was what she looked like when the person she loved proposed to her. "Is he still following us?" Ethan adjusted his position, allowing the woman in his arms to sleep more comfortably. The driver glanced in the rearview mirror at his young boss's cold expression and replied in a low voice, "He's still behind us." Ethan let out a soft tusk. After the driver had smoothly pulled over, he gently opened the car door and stepped out with his long legs. The car that had been following them at a distance also stopped. Ethan walked straight up and pulled open the rear door. He looked at Warren with hostility. "What are you doing following us?" Warren looked up numbly. "I just wanted to see her, to say a word to her." Ethan sneered, all traces of the gentle man he was with Seraphina gone. His dark suit made him seem incredibly imposing. What right do you have to see her? What do you want to say to my fiancé? He glanced disdainfully at Warren's legs, his voice mocking. You can't even stand up. What makes you think you're worthy of my Seraphina? Seeing Warren's face grow even paler, he grabbed his collar and threatened in a low voice. A good ex-boyfriend knows to stay out of her life. Otherwise, I don't mind getting my hands dirty in your family's mess. Ethan then turned to the Preston family's driver, Charles. Please make sure to get Mr. Preston home safely, and don't let me see you again. After releasing his collar, Ethan flicked his hand in disgust. In the car, Seraphina was still sound asleep. After the proposal, Ethan had taken her and her roommates to a nearby bar. Her excited friends had taken turns toasting her. Although Ethan had drunk most of it for her, she couldn't hold her liquor and was still drunk. Looking at Seraphina's flushed cheeks, Ethan's eyes were filled with love. He softened his expression, letting her use him as a human pillow. He watched as the car in front drove off, becoming a small black dot in the distance. Warren's face was ashen. He ordered hoarsely, "Let's go back." But on the way back to the estate, a car suddenly came speeding toward them. The driver seemed to be fleeing in a panic, driving recklessly. Charles swerved to avoid it, but the oncoming car didn't react in time and crashed head-on into a tree. And the person in the passenger seat, now in critical condition, was none other than Victoria. When Victoria's parents received the news, they rushed to the hospital, wailing. My pampered daughter was perfectly fine when she married into your Preston family. How could you treat her like this? You have to give me an explanation, Victoria's mother. Her eyes red, repeatedly questioned Beatrice. But Beatrice's eyes were also filled with hatred. She looked as if she wanted to devour the woman on the hospital bed. Your Vance family has no morals. The daughter you raised is like a thief. She nearly emptied out our entire house. Not only did she steal, but she also hooked up with our driver and tried to elope with him. The more Beatrice spoke, the angrier she got. She not only threatened to send Victoria to prison, but also started fighting with Victoria's mother. The hospital room entrance was a chaotic mess. Seeing this, Arthur Preston had a heart attack and was rushed to the ICU. Warren watched everything with a blank expression. He saw the suppressed smile on the illegitimate son's face and saw Richard and Victoria's father arguing in a corner. Both were trying to use Victoria's situation to their advantage, to get the other to concede something, but their argument went nowhere. One wrong step, and every step after was wrong. He dejectedly returned to the villa where he had once lived with Seraphina and swallowed a handful of sleeping pills. As his consciousness faded, he seemed to dream of another life. In the dream, he had firmly rejected Victoria, avoiding all situations where they might be together. And when he proposed, Seraphina had looked at him with the same tearful smile before throwing herself into his arms. But dreams can never come true, and he would never wake up again. Victoria was saved, but she became a vegetable, destined to lie in bed for the rest of her life. The Preston family also issued an obituary informing the public of Warren's death. The news caused an uproar, with many expressing their shock and sorrow. Who would have thought that the once vibrant and successful Warren Preston would end his life in such a way? Seraphina's expression was calm. She let out a soft sigh. No one is destined to save anyone else. Warren was not someone who couldn't live without her. He had the means to receive medical treatment, but he chose to give up on himself, always waiting for her to save him. How could that be possible? After her wedding to Ethan, Seraphina went to the cemetery to leave a bouquet of flowers for Warren. After a moment of silent contemplation in front of his black and white photo, she bent down and gently placed the flowers. Remembering that Ethan was waiting for her nearby, Seraphina didn't linger and turned to leave. On the way back, she asked, "Since you were at the cemetery, why didn't you go see him?" Ethan held up his hand, the wedding ring on his ring finger gleaming. "He probably wouldn't want to see me. Why would I go looking for trouble?" Seraphina gave him a playful glare but said no more. On the way home, she received a message from her roommate. "Seraphina, I remember where I saw your mister. Nightly before it was the day Warren confessed his feelings to you not long after you were called out. He came to our dorm looking for you. When he found out you were at the sports field, he followed. He just didn't look very happy the whole time. I thought he was there to cause trouble back then, but now that I think about it, did your Mr. Knightley already know you?" Seraphina froze. She turned to the man driving the car. "Ethan, did you come to my school to find me before?" Ethan's expression was a little unnatural. He cleared his throat and said vaguely, "I went once." But no matter how much she pressed him, he wouldn't say another word. That day was the most heartbreaking day of Ethan's life, a day he didn't even want to be reminded of. After his college entrance exams, his parents had sent him abroad to study, foiling his plan to confess his feelings right after the exams. He didn't have Seraphina's contact information and could only wait until he returned to the country to find her at her university. But for 2 consecutive years, his professor kept him at the university for projects, giving him no opportunity to return. When he finally found the time to go back, he had carefully prepared his confession and a gift, but it was all for naught. He saw everyone at the university holding a single rose, and even he was given one. People smiled as they placed the roses in Seraphina's arms, wishing her and Warren a long and happy life together. Ethan hid in the joyful crowd, clenching the rose in his hand, but he never gave it to her. He refused to give her a flower prepared by another man, nor would he say those insincere blessings. When he saw Seraphina nod with a smile, he turned and left without a word, and threw the rose in the trash. He knew that Seraphina preferred gardenias to roses. Perhaps because it was a gift from someone she liked, she had accepted it happily, even at the risk of a mild allergic reaction. He was one step too late. All he could wish for was her happiness. Otherwise, he would have snatched her away without hesitation. So, the moment he found out Warren had cheated, he had made friends with the auntie living next to Alina. And now, his wish had finally come true. Every time his roommate mentioned that day, Ethan would find a way to shut her up, either by feeding her food or with a passionate kiss. Over time, Seraphina gave up asking, until she found a well-preserved iron box at Ethan's parents' house. The box looked old. With his mother's permission, she carefully opened it. Her intuition told her that inside lay the secret Ethan didn't want anyone to touch. Opening it, the first thing she saw was an old photograph. It was a picture of Seraphina as a teenager, giving a speech on stage as a student representative, her smile bright, her eyes like stars. There were also reprints of all the photos of her that had been posted on the school's honor wall after exams. Besides various photos from her school days, there was also a scrapbook containing all of her artwork. Seeing it, Ethan's mother was lost in memory, a gentle smile on her face. Back then, Ethan suddenly became obsessed with visiting art galleries. He would often take many photos and print them out. I thought he was interested in painting, but when I looked, all the works were by an artist named Seraphina Hartwell. A warmth spread through Seraphina's heart, and the iron box in her hands felt incredibly heavy. This was not just a container of memories, it was Ethan's decade-long love. She suddenly missed him dearly. She quickly said her goodbyes to his mother and drove home. In the living room on the first floor, Ethan was sitting on the sofa, his laptop on his lap, so he would know the moment she returned. Seeing her slightly red eyes, he asked nervously, "What's wrong? Did someone upset you?" Seraphina shook her head. She sat on his lap, nestling into his broad, solid chest. "Why didn't you tell me you've been watching me since high school?" Ethan was taken aback, not expecting her to have discovered his 10-year secret love. He lowered his eyes and finally admitted, "I was afraid you'd feel too much pressure if you knew." Seraphina lightly punched him and said with mock annoyance, "You're such a fool." A smile tugged at Ethan's lips. He wrapped his arms around her waist and sighed contentedly. There had been times in the dead of night when he had regretted not returning home sooner, no matter the cost. Maybe he and Seraphina would have been married long ago and even have children by now. But no matter what, in the end, he was the one who would spend the rest of his life with Seraphina. At 25, Ethan Knightley had finally married the girl he had fallen for when he was 15. Seraphina looked up and kissed him. Outside, the sun was shining brightly, and a gentle breeze carried the sweet, rich scent of gardenias from the courtyard, just like the mood of the two of them at that moment. "Thank you, Ethan." Ethan's voice was low and husky as he gently kissed the tip of her nose. "It was my pleasure."